Did you know that more anti-war films were produced during the 1970s than in any decade before or since? The 1970s represented a seismic shift in war cinema as filmmakers processed Vietnam's trauma through their craft, re-examined historical conflicts with newfound cynicism, and pushed technical boundaries to capture combat's chaotic reality. Let's count down 15 forgotten gems that deserve rediscovery. Number 15. Go Tell the Spartans, 1978. Before Apocalypse Now or Platoon, this modest production starring Burt Lancaster offered one of the first honest examinations of America's doomed involvement in Vietnam. Set in 1964, the film follows Major Asa Barker and his men as they establish a defensive position in an abandoned village with strategic significance only to military bureaucrats. What distinguishes Go Tell the Spartans is its focus on the war's early stage, showing how institutional hubris and colonial history set the stage for later disaster. Director Ted Post creates an atmosphere of mounting futility as the American forces realize they're occupying the same village where French troops were massacred a decade earlier. The film's title becomes increasingly ironic as the mission's pointlessness becomes apparent. Lancaster, in one of his finest late-career performances, brings weary dignity to Barker, a career officer who recognizes the strategic absurdity but remains bound by duty. His climactic outburst captures the emerging disillusionment of America's military establishment. Supporting performances from Mark Singer, Craig Wasson, and Jonathan Goldsmith create a convincing unit of men with conflicting attitudes toward their mission. Despite its limited budget, the film achieves remarkable authenticity in its combat sequences. Post emphasizes the disorienting nature of jungle warfare through fragmented editing and handheld camera work, while Dick Richards's screenplay avoids both jingoism and simplistic anti-war messaging in favor of complex character studies. Released when Americans were still processing Vietnam's legacy, Go Tell the Spartans offers historical perspective that many later better-known Vietnam films lack. Its clear-eyed examination of how institutional momentum can override tactical reality remains relevant to military conflicts decades later. Number 14. Cross of Iron, 1977. Sam Peckinpah's only war film shifts the director's exploration of masculine violence to the Eastern Front of World War II, focusing on a conflict between two German officers. Decorated Sergeant Steiner, a battle-hardened veteran who has lost faith in the Nazi cause, and Captain Stransky, a Prussian aristocrat who has transferred to the front specifically to earn the Iron Cross. What makes Cross of Iron exceptional is its uncompromising perspective. By focusing exclusively on German troops without introducing Allied characters, Peckinpah forces viewers to engage with the humanity of soldiers fighting for a cause history has judged monstrous. This moral complexity creates more nuanced anti-war commentary than many more didactic films. Peckinpah brings his trademark balletic violence to the combat sequences, using slow-motion rapid cutting and dynamic camera work to create battle scenes of terrifying intensity. The opening montage establishes the film's examination of how militarism corrupts innocence, while John Coquillon's cinematography creates mud-drenched, smoke-filled landscapes that emphasize war's physical misery. James Coburn delivers one of his finest performances as Steiner, conveying battle-worn fatalism and surprising tenderness in scenes with a captured Russian boy. Maximilian Schell provides perfect counterpoint as the aristocratic Stransky, whose obsession with decorations represents the hollow vanity of military honor. James Mason brings dignified resignation to Colonel Brandt, caught between military duty and moral qualms about the Nazi cause. Despite winning the Golden Seashell at the San Sebastian International Film Festival, production and distribution problems limited the film's initial impact. Today, Cross of Iron stands as one of cinema's most unflinching examinations of combat's psychological toll and the moral bankruptcy of military glory. Themes Peckinpah explores with the same visceral power he brought to westerns, like The Wild Bunch. Number 13. Overlord, 1975. Stuart Cooper's unique hybrid of narrative fiction and documentary footage follows Tom, a young British soldier, from his call-up through training to his participation in the D-Day landings. As Tom moves inexorably toward combat, he's haunted by premonitions of his own death, creating a dreamlike quality that distinguishes this film from conventional war narratives. What makes Overlord extraordinary is its seamless integration of archival material from Britain's Imperial War Museum with newly shot footage. Cinematographer John Alcott filmed the contemporary sequences using 1940s-era lenses and film stock to match the archival footage, creating visual continuity between past and present that suggests the timelessness of the soldier's experience. The film's greatest strength is its intimate focus. Rather than attempting to capture the entire scope of Operation Overlord, Cooper concentrates on one ordinary young man's internal journey. Sterner's gentle performance creates a protagonist who doesn't fit conventional war hero archetypes. Paul Glass's haunting score enhances the film's dreamlike quality, while the sound design creates subtle transitions between Tom's subjective experience and historical reality. The training sequences achieve documentary-like authenticity without sacrificing emotional impact. Unlike many war films that climax with extended battle sequences, Overlord builds toward the invasion with mounting dread, using archival footage of the massive military buildup to convey the operation's scale, while keeping the narrative focused on Tom's increasingly fatalistic perspective. This approach creates a more thoughtful examination of war's human cost than films that emphasize combat spectacle. Released during a period when bombastic war films dominated, quiet, poetic approach found limited commercial success, despite winning the Silver Berlin Bear at the Berlin International Film Festival. Its recent restoration by the Criterion Collection has finally allowed audiences to appreciate its unique approach to portraying the intersection of individual lives with historic events. Number 12, Johnny Got His Gun, 1971. Dalton Trumbo's only directorial effort adapts his own 1939 novel about Joe Bonham, a World War I soldier who loses his arms, legs, face, and all sensory organs except touch to an artillery shell, becoming a prisoner in his own body. As medical staff keep him alive as a curiosity, Joe attempts to communicate and eventually begs to be displayed as a warning about war's true cost. What makes this film remarkable is its structural boldness. Trumbo presents Joe's physical reality in stark black and white, while his memories, dreams, and hallucinations appear in color. This visual distinction creates devastating contrast between Joe's rich internal world and his horrific physical circumstance. The film's most powerful sequence achieves unbearable emotional impact through restraint rather than graphic imagery. Timothy Bottoms delivers an extraordinary performance, conveying Joe's entire character through voiceover and brief flashbacks, while spending most of the film completely hidden beneath bandages. Supporting performances from Jason Robards and Donald Sutherland add emotional and philosophical depth to Joe's internal struggle. The film's production design by Harold Michelson creates institutional sterility in the hospital sequences that contrasts with the warm nostalgia of Joe's memories, while Jerry Fielding's score shifts between military motifs and more intimate themes that reflect Joe's psychological journey from soldier to living anti-war symbol. Trumbo, who was blacklisted during the McCarthy era, brings personal understanding of institutional power to the film's portrayal of military and medical authorities who prefer to keep Joe hidden rather than confront the human cost of warfare. This political perspective makes Johnny Got His Gun more than simply an anti-war statement. While the film won the Grand Prix Special de Jury at Cannes, its uncompromising bleakness limited its commercial appeal. Today, it stands as one of cinema's most powerful examinations of war's dehumanizing effect, its relevance extending beyond any specific conflict to question the very nature of sacrifice in modern warfare. Number 11, The Ascent, 1977. Larissa Shepitko's final film before her untimely death follows two Soviet partisans, Sotnikov and Rybak, who leave their starving unit to search for food in Nazi-occupied Belarus during the brutal winter of 1942. When they're captured by collaborationist police, they face impossible moral choices, certain death or survival, through betrayal. What distinguishes The Ascent is Shepitko's transformation of a war narrative into a spiritual journey. The title's religious connotation becomes increasingly explicit as Sotnikov's physical suffering parallels Christ's passion, while Ryback's temptation toward collaboration explores how extreme circumstances can erode moral certainty. This spiritual dimension elevates the film beyond conventional war storytelling into profound examination of human nature under unbearable pressure. Vladimir Gostyukhin and Boris Plotnikov deliver performances of extraordinary physical and emotional intensity, like Ryback and Sotnikov. Their divergent responses to interrogation create the film's central moral tension. Anatoly Solzhenitsyn brings chilling humanity to the Nazi collaborator Portnov, suggesting how ideology can corrupt intellectual sophistication. Vladimir Chuknov's black-and-white cinematography transforms the snow-covered landscape into a stark moral battlefield where no neutral ground exists. The extreme close-ups of faces during interrogation sequences reveal psychological struggle with unflinching intensity, while Alfred Schnittke's spare score uses orthodox choral elements to enhance the film's spiritual resonance. Unlike many Soviet war films that emphasize collective heroism, The Ascent focuses on individual moral choice within systematic brutality. Shepitko avoids both sentimental patriotism and nihilistic despair, instead examining how ordinary people maintain humanity under extreme conditions. This moral complexity distinguishes the film from more propagandistic treatments of the Eastern Front. While celebrated in the Soviet Union, The Ascent remained largely unseen in the West until recent restorations. Today, it stands as one of cinema's most profound examinations of war's moral dimensions, transcending its specific historical context to explore timeless questions about courage, survival, and spiritual transcendence. Number 10. Tora, 1970. This ambitious Japanese-American co-production recreates the events leading to the Pearl Harbor attack with documentary-like precision and the unusual approach of showing both American and Japanese perspectives with equal attention to historical accuracy. By focusing on the planning intelligence failures and execution of the attack rather than individual heroics, the film creates a comprehensive understanding of how this pivotal historical moment unfolded. What makes Tora is its commitment to historical detail over dramatic license. The American sequences and Japanese sequences maintain consistent documentary realism despite being filmed by separate crews. This approach creates more thought-provoking historical analysis than many more personality-driven war films. The film's massive production scale allowed for unprecedented accuracy in recreating the attack. The visual effects team led by L.B. Abbott combined full-scale replicas meticulously detailed, miniatures, and actual vintage aircraft to create combat sequences of remarkable authenticity. These effects won a well-deserved Academy Award, achieving greater realism through practical techniques than many later digital recreations. Rather than casting major stars, the producers selected character actors like Martin Balsam, E.G. Marshall, and So Yamamura, who disappear into their historical roles. This approach enhances the film's documentary quality, focusing attention on the events themselves rather than star performances. The script carefully balances technical military detail with clear explanation for general audiences. While initially receiving mixed reviews and disappointing box office in America, Tora, greater appreciation in Japan, where its even-handed approach was welcomed. Modern reassessment has recognized its historical value and technical achievements, which influenced later war films like Midway and The Thin Red Line in their attention to operational detail and multiple perspectives. Unlike many war films of its era, Tora to demonize either side, instead showing how historical forces and human error can lead nations into conflict. Number 9. Aces High, 1976. Based on R.C. Sherriff's play Journey's End and influenced by the poetry of Wilfred Owen, this British World War I aviation drama follows newly commissioned Lieutenant Croft as he joins a Royal Flying Corps squadron on the Western Front. His idealism quickly erodes when he discovers that his childhood hero and former school prefect, Captain Gresham, has been transformed into a bitter alcoholic by the pressures of command and the squadron's appalling casualty rate. What distinguishes Aces High from many war films is its unflinching portrayal of psychological breakdown. The film meticulously documents how the average 3-week life expectancy of RFC pilots creates a culture of fatalistic hedonism, gallows humor, and emotional detachment. Director Jack Gold creates devastating contrast between the squadron's boisterous drinking songs and the silent, empty chairs that multiply after each mission. The aerial sequences filmed using authentic replicas of SC-5A fighters and Airco DH-4 bombers achieve remarkable authenticity through in-flight photography rather than relying on miniatures or back projection. Cinematographer Jerry Fisher captures both the exhilaration of flight and the terror of combat, often positioning cameras directly in the cockpit to show the pilot's reactions during dogfights. Malcolm McDowell brings perfect public school earnestness to Croft, charting his rapid disillusionment with painful authenticity. Christopher Plummer delivers a nuanced performance as Squadron Leader Sinclair, whose outward joviality masks profound trauma, while Simon Ward creates a heartbreaking portrait of an officer whose nerve has completely shattered, but who continues flying through misplaced sense of duty. The film's most powerful sequence encapsulates its central theme, the endless cycle of sacrifice that characterized the war's grinding attrition. Unlike many films that emphasize the technological romance of early aviation, Aces High keeps its focus squarely on the human cost of aerial warfare. Though overshadowed by more romantic treatments of WWI aviation, Aces High provides one of cinema's most psychologically accurate portrayals of combat stress and the coping mechanisms soldiers develop to function under constant threat of death. Number 8. Too Late the Hero, 1970. Robert Aldrich's Pacific theater drama follows a reluctant intelligence officer, Lieutenant Lawson, who is assigned to join a British unit for a dangerous mission to destroy a Japanese radio transmitter on a remote island. What should be a simple operation devolves into a desperate fight for survival as the mismatched Allied soldiers find themselves pursued through the jungle by determined Japanese forces. What makes Too Late the Hero distinctive is its subversion of war movie conventions. Aldrich, who previously directed The Dirty Dozen, deliberately undermines heroic expectations through characters who are ill-suited for their mission and lack the traditional camaraderie of war film units. Michael Caine's cynical British officer has no interest in sacrifice, while Robertson's American linguist has avoided combat duty until being unwillingly thrust into danger. The film's visual style emphasizes the disorienting, claustrophobic nature of jungle warfare. Cinematographer Joseph Biroc creates striking contrast between the orderly military base and the chaotic, visually confusing jungle environment where enemies can appear without warning. The combat sequences focus on confusion and panic rather than heroic action, with characters often making fatal mistakes due to exhaustion or fear. The performances deliberately contradict war film archetypes. Caine plays against his star image as a selfish officer more interested in survival than duty, while Henry Fonda makes a brief but significant appearance as a commander who sends men to die from the safety of headquarters. Japanese actor Ken Takakura brings humanity to the pursuing officer, creating an enemy with comprehensible motivation rather than racist caricature. Aldrich's direction emphasizes the physical misery of the mission. The screenplay by Lucas Heller and Robert Sherman structures the film as a series of increasing disasters that erode both the mission's purpose and the men's humanity, leading to a final act where survival completely replaces military objectives. Despite featuring major stars, Too Late the Hero found limited commercial success, perhaps because its cynical perspective challenged audiences' expectations. Today, its unsentimental portrayal of warfare as futile suffering rather than glorious adventure feels more honest than many more celebrated combat films. Number 7. The Blockhouse, 1973. Based on a true incident, this claustrophobic drama follows 6 men trapped in Tiaup, a German underground supply bunker, after an Allied bombing on D-Day. Sealed inside with ample food, wine, and candles, but no way to escape, they face a slow psychological and physical deterioration as days turn to weeks, months, and years. What distinguishes The Blockhouse is its radical minimalism. Director Clive Reese confines the entire film to the bunker's interior, creating intense claustrophobia that puts viewers in the prisoner's psychological state. This spatial restriction transforms what could have been a conventional war film into an existential chamber drama, examining how humans cope with imprisonment, isolation, and the loss of hope. Peter Sellers, in a rare dramatic role far removed from his comedic persona, delivers a remarkable restraint as Frenchman Rouquet. His quiet desperation contrasts with Charles Aznavour's more volatile Visconti, creating complex character dynamics as the men alternate between solidarity and conflict. Supporting performances from Jeremy Kemp, Per Oscarsson, and Peter Vaughan create a microcosm of different nationalities and personalities united only by their shared imprisonment. The film's visual strategy makes virtue of limitation. Cinematographer Walter LaSalle creates striking compositions using only the candlelight that sustains the men, with faces emerging from darkness and receding into shadow as candles burn down. This lighting approach not only creates appropriate atmosphere, but visually represents the men's dwindling resources and hope. Unlike conventional war films that build toward climactic action or escape, The Blockhouse unfolds as a study in entropy. The screenplay by John Gould adapts Jean-Paul Kléber's novel with remarkable economy-finding drama in small details. The ritual of meal preparation, the allocation of candles, the maintenance of calendars to track time when all days are identical. Despite its powerful performances and concept, The Blockhouse received limited distribution and has been largely forgotten. Today, its exploration of confinement and psychological deterioration remains uniquely powerful, offering one of cinema's most distinctive examinations of war's collateral victims. Number 6. Zulu Dawn, 1979. This prequel to the better-known Zulu depicts the Battle of Isandlwana in 1879, where Zulu warriors inflicted the worst defeat on the British Army in its colonial history. By focusing on the arrogance and tactical errors that led to disaster, the film provides a more critical examination of British imperialism than many colonial-era war films, while still acknowledging the courage of soldiers on both sides. What makes Zulu Dawn exceptional is its historical accuracy and balanced perspective. Director Douglas Hickox recreates the battle with meticulous attention to tactical detail, showing how British adherence to conventional European warfare proved catastrophically unsuited to fighting the more adaptable Zulu forces. The screenplay by Cy Enfield avoids both colonial apologism and simplistic anti-imperial messaging, instead showing how institutional arrogance led to military disaster. The film boasts an extraordinary cast, with Peter O'Toole bringing appropriate hauteur to Lord Chelmsford, the commander whose divided forces and underestimation of Zulu capabilities proved fatal. Burt Lancaster provides contrasting pragmatism as Colonel Durnford, whose warnings go unheeded, while Bob Hoskins, Denholm Elliott, and Simon Ward create distinct characters among the doomed officers and men. Simon Sabella brings dignity to the role of Cetshwayo, the Zulu king, whose military acumen is consistently underestimated by the British. Cinematographer Osama Rawi captures both the stunning beauty of the South African landscape and the enormous scale of the battle, which involved over 2,000 Zulu warriors against approximately 1,800 British and colonial troops. The battle sequences achieve remarkable authenticity through the participation of actual Zulu people, recreating their ancestors' victory, while Elmer Bernstein's score incorporates traditional Zulu musical elements alongside British military themes. Unlike many films depicting colonial conflicts, Zulu Dawn presents the Zulu as tactically sophisticated warriors rather than primitive opponents. The film's detailed depiction of Zulu battle formations and strategy gives equal weight to both sides' military thinking, while showing how British racism led them to fatally underestimate their opponents. Despite its impressive production values and historical significance, Zulu Dawn received limited distribution and has been overshadowed by the original Zulu. Today, it stands as one of cinema's most accurate depictions of colonial warfare and a powerful examination of how military arrogance leads to catastrophic defeat. Number 5. Duck You Sucker, 1971. Also released as A Fistful of Dynamite and Once Upon a Time in the Revolution, Sergio Leone's epic follows the unlikely partnership between Juan Miranda, a Mexican bandit, and John Mallory, an Irish revolutionary explosives expert during the Mexican Revolution. What begins as a plan to rob a bank evolves into reluctant revolutionary action as the characters are swept into historical forces larger than themselves. What makes this film extraordinary is Leone's transformation of the war film through his distinctive visual style. His trademark extreme close-ups and expansive wide shots create moral landscapes where personal choices gain epic significance. The revolution's violence is portrayed with both operatic grandeur and unflinching brutality, particularly in the machine gun massacre sequence that stands among cinema's most devastating depictions of military atrocity. Rod Steiger delivers a remarkable performance, like Juan, beginning as an almost comic figure before revealing layers of trauma and reluctant idealism. James Coburn brings melancholy gravity to John, whose flashbacks to Ireland reveal how personal tragedy drove him to revolutionary violence. Their unlikely friendship becomes the emotional core amid revolutionary chaos, creating one of cinema's most complex portrayals of male bonding in wartime. Ennio Morricone's score ranks among his finest achievements, with the haunting main theme, Sean's Theme, using panpipes to evoke both Irish folk traditions and revolutionary yearning. The soundtrack's integration of Mexican musical elements and revolutionary songs creates perfect accompaniment to Leone's visual storytelling. Unlike many revolutionary narratives, Duck You Sucker maintains profound ambivalence about political violence. Through John's flashbacks to the Irish struggle and the Mexican Revolution's betrayed idealism, Leone examines how noble causes can lead to atrocities and how revolutions often devour their own children. This political complexity creates a more sophisticated examination of war's moral dimensions than many more didactic films. Despite Leone's masterful direction and the film's epic-scale distribution problems and multiple title changes limited its initial impact. Today, it stands as the director's most overtly political work and one of cinema's most thought-provoking examinations of how ordinary people become reluctant participants in historical upheaval. Number 4. The Duelists, 1977. Ridley Scott's directorial debut adapts Joseph Conrad's story about two French officers whose minor disagreement during the Napoleonic Wars spirals into a decades-long series of duels. As their obsessive rivalry continues through Napoleon's rise and fall, it becomes a meditation on honor, purpose, and the arbitrary nature of military conflict. What distinguishes The Duelists is its visual splendor. Influenced by his background in advertising and passion for painting, Scott and cinematographer Frank Tidy create compositions directly inspired by Napoleonic-era artists like Géricault and Caravaggio. The dueling sequences represent some of cinema's most beautiful and technically precise combat scenes, emphasizing the ritualized nature of formalized violence. The performances subvert expectations through unconventional casting. Keitel brings volcanic intensity to Farad, his distinctly American energy creating compelling contrast with his French imperial role. Carradine's natural reticence perfectly captures de Hubert's reluctant participation in a conflict he cannot escape due to military honor. Supporting performances from Albert Finney, Edward Fox, and Diana Quick create a richly textured historical world around the central conflict. Howard Blake's orchestral score enhances the film's period authenticity, while the production design achieves remarkable historical accuracy despite the film's modest budget. Scott's decision to film in authentic locations throughout France and Britain creates genuine historical atmosphere that big-budget productions often fail to achieve through sets and digital effects. What elevates The Duelists beyond conventional historical drama is its exploration of how arbitrary conflicts become self-perpetuating through pride and institutional momentum. The film's examination of masculine honor codes and their destructive consequences creates subtle anti-war commentary through personal rather than political focus. Despite winning the Best First Film Award at Cannes, The Duelists received limited distribution and has been overshadowed by Scott's later science fiction blockbusters. Today, it stands as one of cinema's most visually striking historical dramas and a powerful examination of how war's ritualized violence shapes individual psychology, even in conflicts between just two men. Number 3. Twilight's Last Gleaming, 1977. Robert Aldrich's political thriller follows General Lawrence Dell, a Vietnam veteran and former POW who, along with 3 other escaped convicts, seizes control of a Montana missile silo and threatens to launch nuclear weapons unless the president reveals the truth about America's real motives for involvement in Vietnam. What makes this film exceptional is its combination of taut thriller mechanics with serious political critique. Aldrich maintains nail-biting tension through the technical details of both the missile silo takeover and the government response, while simultaneously exploring profound questions about military morality, government deception, and America's post-Vietnam identity crisis. This balance of entertainment and intellectual substance distinguishes it from both mindless action films and didactic political dramas. The film's visual presentation employs split-screen techniques to maintain multiple simultaneous storylines. This approach creates both dynamic visual interest and thematic resonance, showing how political decisions fragment into separate realities experienced by different participants in national crises. Burt Lancaster delivers one of his finest late-career performances as Dell, creating a military rebel whose actions are driven by patriotism rather than madness. His idealistic demand for government honesty contrasts with Charles Durning's pragmatic president, whose moral wrestling with whether to reveal damaging truths creates the film's central ethical dilemma. Strong supporting performances from Richard Widmark, Melvin Douglas, and Paul Winfield create complex dynamics among military and civilian leadership. The screenplay by Ronald M. Cohen and Edward Hughes presents a frighteningly plausible scenario while using it to explore larger questions about democratic accountability in military decisions. The film's suggestion that America entered Vietnam without believing it could win created controversial commentary on still raw national wounds. Despite its stellar cast and director, Twilight's Last Gleaming performed poorly at the box office, perhaps because American audiences weren't ready for its direct confrontation with Vietnam's moral legacy. Today, its examination of military ethics, government transparency, and the tension between national security and democratic values remains disturbingly relevant. Number 2. Soldier of Orange, 1977. Paul Verhoeven's Dutch epic follows a group of students in the Netherlands whose different responses to Nazi occupation transform them from carefree undergraduates to resistance fighters, collaborators, and refugees. Based on the autobiography of Erich Haselhoff Rolf Zima, the film tracks these diverging paths from 1938 through the war years and into the aftermath, creating a comprehensive portrait of a nation under occupation. What makes Soldier of Orange exceptional is its moral complexity and refusal to indulge in simplistic heroism. Verhoeven presents resistance not as an immediate or universal response, but as a gradual process influenced by personal circumstances and character. By showing how similar young men make radically different choices, the film examines the moral gray areas that most war films avoid. Rutger Hauer delivers a star-making performance as Eric, whose evolution from carefree student to resistance operative occurs through believable stages rather than sudden conversion. Jeroen Krabbe creates a complex portrait of Gus, whose Jewish heritage makes neutrality impossible, while Derek DeLint's Alex shows how social class and personality can lead to collaboration. The ensemble creates a convincing portrait of Dutch society across political and economic divisions. Jost Vacano's cinematography captures both the beauty of pre-war Netherlands and the increasing tension of occupation through subtle shifts in lighting and composition. The film's most visually striking sequences achieve thrilling suspense while maintaining historical authenticity. Unlike many resistance narratives that focus solely on heroism, Verhoeven examines the cost of both action and inaction. The film acknowledges the sexual and economic bargaining that occurred under occupation, the personal vendettas that sometimes motivated resistance actions, and the complicated post-war reckonings between those who fought, fled, or This unflinching moral complexity makes Soldier of Orange a more honest examination of life under occupation than many more sanitized accounts. Despite its commercial success in the Netherlands, Soldier of Orange received limited international distribution. Today, it stands as one of cinema's most comprehensive examinations of how war transforms ordinary lives and forces moral choices that reveal true character. Number 1. The Ascent, 1977. Larisa Shepitko's masterpiece follows two Soviet partisans who leave their starving unit to search for food during the brutal winter of 1942 in Nazi-occupied Belarus. When they're captured by collaborationist police, both men face torture and impossible moral choices: certain death or survival through betrayal. What elevates The Ascent above most war films is Shepitko's transformation of a military narrative into a spiritual journey. The title's religious connotation becomes increasingly explicit as Sotnikov's physical suffering parallels Christ's passion, while Rybak's temptation toward collaboration explores how extreme circumstances can erode moral certainty. This spiritual dimension creates profound examination of human nature under unbearable pressure. Vladimir Gostyukhin and Boris Plotnikov deliver performances of extraordinary physical and emotional intensity. Plotnikov's gaunt, almost translucent appearance as Sotnikov creates an otherworldly quality that reinforces his spiritual transformation, while Gostyukhin's more robust Rybak embodies the tortured pragmatism of someone who chooses survival at any cost. Anatoly Solonitsyn brings chilling complexity to the collaborator Portnov, suggesting how intellectual sophistication can become moral corruption. Vladimir Chuknov's black-and-white cinematography transforms the snow-covered landscape into a moral battlefield where no neutral ground exists. The stark contrast between blinding white exteriors and shadow-filled interrogation rooms creates visual metaphors for the film's exploration of moral light and darkness. The extreme close-ups during torture sequences create unbearable intimacy with suffering that most war films avoid. Alfred Schnittke's Spare Score incorporates orthodox choral elements that enhance the film's spiritual resonance without sentimentality. The sound design creates tension through subtle environmental details rather than dramatic music. Unlike many Soviet war films that emphasize collective heroism and ideological certainty, The Ascent focuses on individual moral choice within systematic brutality. Shepitko avoids both patriotic propaganda and nihilistic despair, instead examining how ordinary people maintain humanity under extreme conditions. This moral complexity acknowledges both the possibility of transcendent courage and the understandable temptation of self-preservation. While celebrated in the Soviet Union, The Ascent remained largely unseen in the West until recent restorations. Today, it stands as perhaps the greatest war film of the 1970s, transcending its specific historical context to explore timeless questions about moral courage and spiritual transcendence in the face of overwhelming evil.